Brand new show, Waterways Ontario, celebrating the best of the province. And who better to kick it off with than the Premier himself, Doug Ford. How are you, sir?
Thanks for having me by, Stephen.
Oh, thanks for making the time.
Beautiful here.
The temperature's rising, you're feeling the heat. All you ever wanted it to be. The summer of you. Do all the things you wanna do. The summer.
Before we get into this, I'll address the #1 question I got when people heard the Premier of Ontario was going to be a guest on the show. How did you get him? Well, in short, I asked. And he and his office agreed for 2 reasons, I think. One is that this show will shine a light on some of the highlights of the province's boating-based adventures. But #2 is because the Premier is a boater himself. And when you get boaters together, you get stuff like this.
It's been a few years on our boat, so this 36-foot CNC sailboat,
Oh, yeah?
somewhere around there. That might be a little larger. But spent a lot of time at Ontario Place and
Yeah.
cruising the islands here, and
Nice.
so it was good.
Didn't realize you were a sailor.
Well, I wouldn't call myself an official sailor, but we were on there.
So before we get into the province and all that stuff, I want to know about your story. You're a boater. You spend time on the water. Tell me about that.
Well, my dad bought a 36-foot CNC sailboat when I was probably 13, 14. We had it for about 5, 6 years and just had a great time. Just sailing Lake Ontario and going to the regattas every weekend. Grew up at Ontario Place. Every weekend we'd go to Ontario Place and dock there.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Great sailing on the Great Lakes. Some people think, well, if you're sailing in Canada, you want the coast, but this is a great spot for it.
Yeah, is it ever? It's beautiful scenery. We never left Lake Ontario. We made one attempt to get across the lake. He did it numerous times, but we got caught in a gale storm wind, and it was a nightmare. People don't realize how rough well, not just Lake Ontario, all the Great Lakes are.
Yeah, which is why we do these safety segments. You got to make sure you're safe on the water. Only go out if you know what's going on.
100%.
60 seconds of safety this week with Constable Stacey Kello of the Toronto Police Marine Unit. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So my question for you is, I see you and your colleagues with your flashy lights, and I'm on my boat. What do I do? Do I approach you? Do I kill the engine? Do I put it in neutral? What's the right thing to do?
Well, every situation is different. If you're just running along and you have no idea and all of a sudden you see us behind you, just slow it down. You can slow it down gently. You don't have to go from gear right into neutral. Just go down your gears, slow down. You can put it in neutral. We'll wave at you. We'll let you know. A lot of times once everyone's safe, I'll say a few words alongside your vessel, and then I'll have you probably come alongside me. If you're not abiding by the rules, we might come alongside you a little bit faster, but don't panic. We can see what's going on with the movement of your boat, so we'll just slow you down, and we'll probably have a conversation from outside the vessel, a safe distance, and then we'll work on. It's not a rush, like we don't have to rush onto your vessel, right. So just slow down, and then your heart rate comes down. And even just like the next thing we might want is to know where your lines are. Inside, we'll just make sure that there's no lines hanging outside the boat for safety onto the props. But we'll figure that out. We'll go slow, and there's nothing to be worried about.
Perfect.
It might startle you a bit, but just slowing down, and then we'll let you know what to do.
Don't panic, slow down, and listen to it. But you'll direct me on what to do if you want me to approach or just to stand down.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. Safe on the water. You know, you have the sailboat, there's the cottage life. Is there 1 or 2 memories of Ontario waterways and boating that are special to you that jump out?
Well, I think 2. One at the cottage with the kids growing up and having fun on our lake and doing the inner tubing and water skiing and all the fun things. And I guess the second was when we grew up and we had a boat. And probably Ontario Place was the most memorable, or the regattas.
Yeah, that's what I love. So this is, we're on my boat right now, and my wife and my 8-year-old and I, it's cottage country in the city.
That's right.
We commute to the cottage by subway.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, what a beautiful boat you have here. And
thank you.
You get to go anywhere. It's a mobile cottage, as we say.
But it's also, you know, the Great Lakes get a lot of the attention, and the bigger lake, like Lake Nipissing and all those things. But there's 250,000 lakes. We are absolutely spoiled in Ontario. As the premier, you literally go everywhere. Is it just me that's a boater that sees this, or is there water and boating adventures all over the place?
It's all over, and you don't realize it. And I've had the privilege to be the premier, and with that opportunity and that privilege, you get to fly right across the province from north, south, east, west, and people don't realize how large Ontario is. It's 1,070,000 kilometers, and when you're flying over and you're going out to Kenora by the Manitoba border, and they're telling you it's another 800 kilometers north, it's pretty staggering. I always use this example with our American friends. You can drive down to Florida quicker than if you start up in one end of the corner of the province and loop around and out to Manitoba.
Give it in the crowd. Show them how you
Let's talk a little bit about the specifics of Ontario and some of the gems. We got the Great Lakes. We've got, you know, like the Rideau Canal, for example. If you want history, that's living history.
Yeah, there's 200 years of history in the waterways in Ontario. And as you know, I think everyone knows, that's how trade happened. And the economy thrived if you were on the water. Back then, it still continues to thrive. Majority of large cities in North America are on a waterway.
Yeah.
No matter if it's the Mississippi or one of the Great Lakes or the oceans, it goes right back to our roots.
Speaking of which, a perfectly timed ports boat. This is a working harbor. This is Ports Toronto and then Hamilton. These aren't just recreational. This is big business and ocean-going freighters, and the St. Lawrence Seaway opened everything up.
Well, we right there where the ports are, where we get our sugar, right? Sugar gets dropped off every week, and other goods get dropped off, and it's key to our economy.
Sure, key to our economy is a catch-all term sometimes, but it's no exaggeration here. The St. Lawrence Seaway connects the Great Lakes with the Atlantic Ocean and is largely in Ontario, with locks from near Cornwall through the Welland Canal and its 8 locks that get around that pesky little navigation hazard you may have heard of, through the final lock in Sault Ste. Marie and into Lake Superior and as far as Thunder Bay. A study from 2023 found that in Ontario alone, water-based shipping directly contributes more than 22,000 jobs, with tens of thousands of indirect and induced jobs on top of that, with an overall economic impact of more than 9.5 billion Canadian dollars. The bulk of the cargo is what's classified as dry bulk, construction materials and aggregate supplies. And then it's grain and iron ore. This all runs through port authorities who operate essentially at an arm's length from the federal government. And they set their own fees, maintain shipping channels, and all the other business operations from facilities to land leasing as well. Ontario has 4 of these: the Thunder Bay Port Authority, primarily handling grain shipments, the Windsor Port Authority, the Hamilton-Oshawa Port Authority, which handles basically everything on Lake Ontario other than Toronto, which of course leaves the Toronto Port Authority, which, though the smallest in terms of cargo, is no slouch, with nearly 200 ships delivering more than 2 million metric tons of cargo every year. And during this series, we'll get a look at what it takes to land a job on these monsters of the water and how an Ontario-based college is one of the leading training grounds. This all ties Ontario to the rest of the world through global trade, but this show isn't about looking outside the provincial borders. It's about looking inside. Yeah, and then you have some really unique, only see in Ontario things, like on the Trent Severn Waterway.
Yep, and the Peterborough lift lock.
Yes, I love that thing.
As I got educated, and that's the highest lift lock there is.
The world's high. It's described to me as a teeter-totter, and it's fascinating. It's operated the same way that it always was, and those big booms are floating on water, and so they put 1 foot of extra water on the top one, and that squeezes the water through this crossover valve, and it's been going for whatever, it's 100 and some years. Only in Ontario.
Only in Ontario.
And you get something like Big Chute Marine Railway, a one-of-a-kind version of a lock in cold water Ontario. There's nothing that comes close to it anywhere in North America. Something that you can only see in Ontario is this. This is the Big Chute Marine Railway. Oh, and this guy hogging all the handsome. This is Chad Buckner with Parks Canada. How are you, buddy?
Hey, I'm great, Steve. Great to be back.
So, this is wicked cool. We got people watching it. Tell me what this is for people that have never seen it.
Well, welcome to the Trent Severn Waterway, where across the system, it is deemed as the finest system of navigation in the world. And what makes it so unique is the incredible mix of historic assets, newer assets, and then North America's only Big Chute Marine Railway. Big Chute Marine Railway is unlike any lock in North America, where we take the boats high and dry out of the water, over a road, across the cliff, and down to the other side. This is the only place where you get to ride in your boat across dry land on a 26-foot high cart to the other side. It is our version of the Trent Severn Waterway boat roller coaster.
But we should point out, it goes nice and slow. So whether you're coming by boat or by land, it's worth the drive to the Big Chute. And I'm gonna set up a little t-shirt stand, Big Shooters only. Maybe next year, I don't know. Thanks, buddy.
You're welcome.
In the crowd, show them how you feel.
What is, you get to talk to other provinces and friends in the States and things like that. What, in terms of waterways or recreation and things like that, is Ontario, I mean, I'm biased because I'm in this world, but is that what other people see us as?
Yeah, well, we have a group called the Great Lakes Committee.
Yeah.
And that consists of business people on the Great Lakes and municipalities and cities and states, U.S. states. So we work in conjunction with the U.S. and yeah, it's really good to sit down and make sure that we protect our Great Lakes and the watershed as well, because it's eroding.
If you drive to Canada's southernmost city, you'll find the University of Windsor. And its Great Lakes Institute for Environmental Research is leading the way for healthy and sustainable waters. And the smart folks that are working on that, let me get in the way to poke around. Got a very cool behind-the-scenes look here with Professor Trevor Pitcher. How are you, buddy?
Good, thanks. Nice to be here.
Thanks for opening the doors for us here at FREC, which is an acronym which stands for...
It's the Freshwater Restoration Ecology Center here in LaSalle, Ontario.
And that is a bunch of big words, which means that you do what?
Well, essentially, the center is set up to restore, like the name suggests, restore freshwater resources. And those resources might be drinking water, they might be salmon like you have right here behind us, or they might be endangered species that are essentially on the brink of extinction.
And so when you're talking, like, I don't know anything about fish or fishing other than I throw a hook in and pull something out. And I know that there's like hatcheries and things like that. So is that what you're doing? Like,
Yeah.
these fish will end up in the Great Lakes?
Yeah, absolutely. We do the science behind the hatcheries. So a lot of these hatcheries, there's 9 major hatcheries in Ontario, and they produce 12 million fish a year for sport fishing. And essentially, when they have problems and dilemmas with fish health or other issues, they come to us and ask us to help them out with some of the science behind the scenes.
Cool.
Yeah.
And, we can hear the hum of the machines.
Yeah.
You can see all the tanks. There's lots going on here. What are a couple of the key projects you have going on? Because there's too much to list all of them. Give me 2 or 3.
Absolutely. So, one of the big economic drivers in Ontario is fisheries in Great Lakes, such as Lake Ontario, Lake Erie. And one of the big things we do is we help the government decide how much stocking should happen, what strains of fish should be put in, and essentially helping regulate those issues. And we also work on a big project here on red-side dace, which are endangered on the brink of extinction in Canada, and we're looking to captively breed them and hopefully reintroduce them back to the wild in the next 5 to 10 years.
Brink of it. And you're saying that this isn't just the most rare fish, this might be the rarest animal at all in Canada, is that right?
This is literally the poster child for extinction in Canada. So the red-side dace is on the brink of extinction if we don't try to do something a little bit different. So we're working on solutions based on research questions.
Do you know if there's anywhere else working on that, or are you guys the only ones working on this?
We
one
work
fish?
on this, and there's other people invested in this. Citizens are interested in this. The Toronto Zoo is interested in this. There's scientists, around, but we're the main people that kind of do most of the work on this species.
And we have those endangered fish in
We
here?
have them right here in this building.
Oh, you got to show me those.
Absolutely.
All
Well,
right.
if you got a minute, I'll show you right here.
Yeah.
So we hold the only captive population of red-side dace in Canada, and the purpose of this is to learn how to captively breed them, so that means bring their numbers up, so that we can give Mother Nature a helping hand by releasing them back into the wild.
Right.
So lots of restoration happens in these rivers and streams, but you know, they've been knocked down so hard, they need a bit of a helping hand. So we're working here amongst these tanks to raise more of them to be eventually released back into the wild.
Right.
So what I can show you really quick, is I can show you what a couple of them look like. So again, this is the most endangered fish in Canada. I wet my hand here, and I can put it in the tank for you. And you can see what's cool about them is they're called red side dace because they have a red side, and during spawning, they become incredibly red. And the reason this species is important, you might say, why is this little minnow important? Well, the answer is because essentially they're a great indicator of the health of the ecosystem. So when they, they require clean, cool water, and when they leave or go away from an area, it means we're in trouble. So we partly want to restore them because it shows that we've done good work to restore habitats, but we also need them to show that we are essentially in a good ecosystem.
Okay.
The good story is that the fishing, the water, and things are much better than they were as recently as 40 years ago. So we've made massive strides over the years. But this is a job where I have to think beyond my career, and so I'm training the next generation of scientists right here in this building that'll take over my job and make sure that these things are still done after I'm done my job.
Right. Right, we got the salmon, we got these endangered guys. Sturgeon, that's another one. That's another big project. Tell me about them. I know some people like to fish for them in some places, but their populations are at risk.
Yeah, so some of the populations in parts of North America are doing really well, so you can fish for them some places. Around here, they've been more threatened, so they've been sort of knocked down a little bit harder. And so some of the projects we're working on is we're working on ways to improve stocking to bring their numbers back up to an area where we hope people can fish for them in the future when their numbers are much higher. But as I mentioned previously, we also do things like restore their habitat. So on the bottom of the Detroit River, they dredged it out a long time ago for shipping.
Right.
And so when they did that, they wiped out all their habitat. So we actively go in and drop down 5 football fields of rock, and essentially that gave them back their habitat they've been missing for 40 or 50 years. And now they're spawning naturally in the river, which they haven't done for years.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so for a long time, there's nowhere for them to go, and we gave them a home, and they're taking advantage of it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So you're keeping the Great Lakes healthy for nature, but also sport fishing. We can get out there and enjoy the water.
Absolutely. Whether you're boating, fishing, interested in going kayaking, we're here to make the water better and the resources better for everybody.
I love it. I'll get out of your hair. Thanks for the tour.
No problems. Glad to have you here today.
Keep up the good work. Good luck, little buddy.
Give it in the crowd. Show them how you feel.
Fishing, I can't, my angler friends are going to be mad I haven't brought it up yet, but there's some great fishing in Ontario, including the Great Lakes, the salmon fishing and all that.
Fishing, yeah.
And we'll have to check out some fishing hotspots as well. From the furthest east you can get in Ontario, along the St. Lawrence River in Cornwall, the easternmost city in the province. Generally say that boating is best shared with friends and family, but sometimes being out here by yourself, washing some lures, that's the way to go. To the western extreme, in Lake of the Woods, which sits on the Manitoba border, with Kenora, the westernmost city in the province. Sometimes I fish solo, which generally doesn't go too well, but I always have a blast, particularly when I can fish with my son. But as you'll see later in this series, I was able to catch up with one of the greatest anglers in Canadian history. A bold claim for sure, but Jeff Gustafson is the only Canadian to ever win the Bassmaster Classic, which is referred to many as the Super Bowl of bass fishing. I went to his hometown of Kenora and got to see how impressive a pro's talents are.
We're into something. Kind of feels bassy, yeah.
Oh.
So it's a long winter, yeah. You better like ice fishing if you're gonna live up here.
You'll catch all of that later this series. It's the salmon fishing and all that.
Salmon fishing, yeah.
I like the tryout fishing opportunities and the free fishing weeks that happen to get people out there. Why is that important for the province to encourage?
Yeah, it's important, and we waive all the fees, and you don't have to have a license. I think it's Father's Day and a couple other days. It gives people an opportunity that might otherwise not be able to go out to bring their kids out or go out themselves and experience fishing. I know we have the Salmon Derby, and I know my brother Rob loved that time. He was a big fishing guy or angler, and he used to go out with Hazel McCallion. We have some great pictures of Hazel and him fishing.
I think I've seen some of those in the news.
Yeah.
That's great. Hurricane Hazel just
That's
hammering the
right.
rod.
Well, he was holding on to her because I think she caught a salmon. She was going to go overboard, water skiing behind a salmon. But Rob makes a good anchor, I'll tell you that. She wasn't going anywhere.
That's funny. Well, the line that we use for the show all the time is some memories can't be made on land, and
right.
you have made a memory for me on my boat
Well,
that I
thank you.
appreciate.
Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thank you.
Beauty. We're gonna go as far as here, which is Brockville. This is the HMCS Haida. This is the Cornwall Canal. I'm pro rain because I'm pro trees. And before leaving Friday Harbor, I got a look at this thing behind us, and it is beautiful. Here we are just north of Newmarket to talk about the Trent Severn Waterway. And you're probably saying, hang on now, I've owned charts and maps for many years, and I can tell you there is no Trent Severn Waterway on the south end of Lake Simcoe. But there almost was. Behind me, you can see what looks like a Trent Severn lock. That's because this actually is one. It's sitting here empty at this bridge at the Rogers Conservation Area. But this could have been an extension of the Trent. In 1906, they started construction, and the idea was they were going to connect Lake Simcoe south to Toronto and Lake Ontario. But by 1912, they realized some survey mistakes were made. They were not able to get sustainable water levels, and so the government pulled the plug on this. And it has been sitting here, unused and empty, for more than a century. There's not even a plaque here for people to know what it is they're looking at. But luckily, there's waterways. You're welcome. I'm gonna stand here for hours and tell everyone, hey, we've got the Trent here. There's no one. There'll be people. We'd like to see you on the water safely. And if you don't know, go slow. Don't go ripping through unless you want to meet these wonderful uniformed officers. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
And also, be aware that the wind can pick up and waves can do lots of things. It might even almost cost your cameraman his hat. But luckily, we have the joystick, so we were able to double back and shimmy right up, and we rescued it. Driven between Toronto and Kingston, Ontario, you will have recognized the Big Apple in Colborne. If you've driven through Sudbury, you'll remember the Big Nickel. And if you come to Kenora, you will see Husky the Muskie.